This is the North Central Washington Candidates Forum, brought to you by the Chelan County Republican Party. This candidate forum is made possible with cooperation from News Radio 560 KPQ, the Wenatchee World, and the NCWLIFE channel. Now, from the Numerica Performing Arts Center, here is forum moderator Kelly Hart.
From the Numerica Performing Arts Center, welcome to the North Central Washington Candidates Forum. It's a joint venture of the NCWLIFE channel, also News Radio 560 KPQ, and the Wenatchee World. I'm Kelly Hart, General Manager of the NCWLIFE channel. I'll be moderating tonight's forum. Dan Kuntz from the NCWLIFE channel is our timekeeper. Our esteemed panel of local journalists include Cal Fitzsimmons from the Wenatchee World, Dave Bernstein from News Radio 560 KPQ, and Steve Hare of the NCWLIFE channel. I'd like to start tonight's forum off by doing the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'd all please rise. Flag is over here to my right. Gentlemen, remove your hats, and here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The live broadcast of this event is being carried on the many television platforms of the NCWLIFE channel live as we all stand and sit here tonight. We're on Localtel Cable Channel 12, Charter Cable Channel 19, over the air on Channel 47.1, and online at ncwlife.com. On the radio, we are heard on News Radio 560 KPQ, and the Wenatchee World is streaming this broadcast live as well on the Wenatchee World homepage. We're covering 6 races tonight. The Chelan County Commissioners, the Douglas County Commissioners, both District 1 and 2, the Washington State House District 12, Position 1 and 2, and the Washington State Senate District 12. Washington State 12th District. For each segment of the forum, both candidates for office will answer one question from each journalist. The journalist may ask both candidates the same question or a different question. The candidates have 2 minutes to answer the question asked of them. After all 3 panelists have asked their questions, the candidates are allowed a 1-minute closing statement. Now, with the 2-minute answer at the 1:45 mark, Dan will ring the bell. That's your mark that you've got 15 seconds left. And once you get to the 2-minute mark, we'll ring the bell often. And I'll probably start talking. So we want to try to keep it to 2 minutes with your answers. Please don't go over. Try as hard as you can. We ask that the audience refrain from applauding or commenting until after the closing statements are concluded. And we want to thank the Chelan County Republican Party as well as the Numerica Performing Arts Center for all they've done to help us put this forum on tonight. So if you would please give them a big round of applause. And our first segment features the race for Chelan County Commissioner with candidates Randy Harrison and Kevin Overbay. And starting off the questioning will be Cal Fitzsimmons of the Wenatchee World. So gentlemen, if you would please come on up to the chairs. As we had advised the candidates before this all started, they can sit or stand. It's up to them. And once again, Cal Fitzsimmons has the first question, and we will head over to the panelist table.
Thank you. This is to both candidates. You're both law enforcement, longtime law enforcement officers. I was curious how you would separate your personal and professional opinions about recreational marijuana from the decision-making process when it comes to regulating that industry.
And Randy, you are first on the coin flip.
Well, that's not too difficult to do. Yes, a long time ago I told people that I did take a federal, an oath to obey the federal law too, which is still against marijuana. But the state of Washington says that marijuana is okay. It's here to stay. It's not going to go anyplace. So I'm fine with it. I don't have to separate that anymore. So the big thing for Chelan County right now is to come up with the right rules and regulations for the marijuana industry to make the industry the best neighbors as they can with their neighbors.
It's not going to be hard to separate. The fact of the matter is I-502 was an initiative of the people. 52% of the voters in Chelan County that voted in that election said that they wanted to be able to have marijuana processing, sale of marijuana, and producing of marijuana in the county. Now that we have the marijuana industry here, I had an opportunity to sit on the I-502 work group for Chelan County. And the upside for that was the opportunity to be able to see and meet with the industry, to be able to work with concerned citizens, and to be able to see exactly what that industry was about. Being able to take a look at this is not Kevin Overbay's personal agenda. This is serving the people of Chelan County. And so what it comes down to is the fact that I have to serve those people, and I have to do the right thing for the county to move the county forward, both to protect the private property rights of the individuals that are being affected right now, but also to grow the economy that business maybe has for this potential community. And so to make the decisions is going to be able to take a look at both sides of the issue and to be able to see what is going to be best for the citizens of Chelan County, for our economy, but also for that industry as a whole.
Thank you both.
Dave Bernstein, your first question for Kevin Overbay.
Kevin, how would you approach the Mission Ridge expansion proposal in balancing the sportsmen's or property owners' concerns and the obvious recreational and economic benefits to the valley?
That's a great question. We had an opportunity last night, as a matter of fact, to be part of the Stimmilt Partnership meeting. And that partnership actually was formed right around 2007, 2008 timeframe. And as chairman of the Malaga-Clackamas Community Council, I actually signed on as a participating group for that committee. And the expansion itself, Josh Jorgensen had an opportunity to present that to the panel last night, and he's been doing a presentation about that. And some of the concerns were for the Upper Wheeler Reservoir and the protection of that water source that's there. And those are mitigating factors that have already been discussed. They've had an open and transparent opportunity to talk with people. And as this continues to move forward, they want to be open and transparent about that. That expansion would be a great thing for our community. And the reason being is it allows for that economic development to occur. It will actually create additional jobs. It will also take something that has been in existence for 50 years and be able to carry it to the next 50 years. And so when you take a look at what they're trying to do there, they are trying to, not just survive, but they're really trying to make something that is very good for our community, that's going to actually bring tourism dollars here, that's going to actually provide an opportunity for our own citizens to really enjoy a state-of-the-art facility. And not only is it just for, the expansion of the downhill skiing opportunities with the opportunity for new and beginner skiers, which is part of that expansion, but also it provides an opportunity for Nordic skiers and other type of winter projects that maybe even might be able to work into the summer. So they have engaged the sportsmen. The sportsmen have been a part of the conversations with them, and they continue to do that. And that's what the whole key is a collaboration, bringing the different groups together that have an interest and taking a look at what it is that they need to do so you can work that out and mitigate it. Thank you.
Dave, your question for Randy Harrison.
And Randy, I'm going to ask you the same question. Again, how will you approach the Mission Ridge expansion proposal, and again, balancing sportsmen's or property owners' concerns and the recreational and economic benefits it could provide for the county?
Well, I also attend the Stimmilt Partnership meetings, and I'm also the vice chair of the Malaga Community Council, so it is a very important thing. One of the things besides the economic growth that could come from increasing that recreational opportunity, there's also protecting the natural resources that we have. And Mission Ridge is a wonderful, basically a natural resource. They do have a good plan for expansion. They are being very transparent about it, and they'll probably continue to do that. And last night at the Stimmilt Partnership, Josh again was given a presentation on on their ideas for the expansion. But I welcome the opportunity. I think it's a very good thing. We have a lot of skiers that really enjoy that place, and they really are talking about adding some other attractions on, like Nordic skiing and some other things. So yeah, it's a very good idea. I give credit to Mission Ridge. And I think they're going to do a good job with the expansion that I hope that we all are going to welcome. Thank you.
Steve Hare, you're next, and your question for Randy Harrison.
Randy, what is your level of knowledge about the BHO?
The BHO. Okay, what does the BHO stand for, Steve?
Behavioral Health Organization.
No. Used to have a different name, huh?
RSN.
Yes, yeah, the Regional Support Network. Well, you know, as a police officer, we realize the great increase that there are people with some emotional issues, and a lot of the homelessness that we see is those people have some issues with mental health too, and you know, it's one of our jobs, the homelessness and mental health, to promote those. I think Douglas County and Chelan County are doing a good job with the resources they have. It's something that needs to be increased. You know, a lot of times as a police officer, we'll be the first ones to respond, you know, before mental health will get there or so forth. And we do everything that we can as the immediate response to that. But yeah, the way they have it set up now will work pretty good. And that's a very good question, Steve. Thanks.
Kevin Overbay.
Kevin, thank you. Let's see, where am I on my question here? How would you describe the relationship between the county and the federal agencies that manage 87% of our land area in Chelan County?
I would say that the relationship is not a bad relationship, but I think it could be improved. You know, we receive PILT funding, you know, pay in lieu of taxes for the properties that are part of the, that encompass that 85 to 87% of our county. And the thing is we take a look at, there's a lot of different issues that come along with those properties. One of the issues, of course, is the management, wildland management of those, you know, as far as wildland fire management and just good stewardship of that. And so to be able to have a voice in that, especially in those areas that would adversely impact the immediate areas as far as the population areas, the wildland urban interface areas. In addition to that, we have seen some closures of some roadways. We've seen some denied access to some areas up the Eniat and so forth. And so, you know, this becomes contentious because folks have a tendency to want to be able to go out into their forests, and they want to have access to these places. And when those accesses are denied, then it falls upon folks to come together and try to find out the resolution and say, hey, how is it that we can get these accesses? I know that Senator Parlett has been working for years to try to get a road in the Stehekin area, you know, built that has, you know, and so I would say that, you know, it's a decent relationship, but I think it can very well be improved, and it would be one of those things that I would definitely work on as your next commissioner.
So we've come to our closing statements, and Randy Harrison, you've got 1 minute.
Well, I want to first thank everybody for being here tonight. This has been quite the experience. I've been throughout Chelan County from one corner to the other, and I really have met a lot of wonderful people. I want to thank all the people that have supported my campaign. I truly appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. My whole life, adult life, has been about public service, and even though my law enforcement career is finally coming to an end, I still have a very strong desire to want to continue to help my home community, Chelan County, and so that's what I hope to do. I still have a lot of eagerness and motivation and left in me. I tell my wife I still have some spunk, and so I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
And Kevin Overbay.
As a fourth-generation resident here, I've watched things change in our valley, and things are going to continue to change. And we have been and seen policies and actions or inactions taken that are kind of behind the change. need to have a commissioner who is going to be out in front, who's going to be proactive, who's going to have the energy, enthusiasm, knowledge, skills, and abilities to be a full-time commissioner for you. And basically, at the end of this year, I will retire after 30 years of public service in the military and the Washington State Patrol. Having been the assistant district commander over a 5-county area, I have a diverse background. I have a diverse experience in a lot of different things, budgeting and all the way down to management of critical incidents. So it comes down to the point where you have a choice. You're the employer. Do your homework, take a look at the resume, and pick the one who you feel is going to best serve you over the next 4 years. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, our Chelan County Commissioner candidates. On both television and on radio, we're going to use the time while we're moving the next set of candidates up to do our commercial breaks. So right now, you're watching and listening to the North Central Washington Candidates Forum.
Some things are better slow. Internet is not one of them. With local Tel Fiber Internet, slow internet is history. Play movies and videos instantly in HD quality. Video chat without interruption. Download music or photos in seconds. And dominate in gaming with virtually no lag time, no matter how many devices are online. Experience gigabit internet. Call or visit LocalTel online to learn more.
Ever not vote because you believed your vote didn't count? That it doesn't matter how we vote in North Central Washington, Seattle will decide the outcome? Well, that's just not true. With just a few more votes, we can change the outcome of statewide races and initiatives. Let your voices be heard. The Chelan County Republican webpage has information about great candidates and initiatives we support. So turn in your ballot and vote.
How do you relax? Rejuvenate your soul. It's time you did. Be good to you. Take an adult timeout at the Alpine Spa in Leavenworth. Call today.
Washington Candidates Forum here at the Numerica Performing Arts Center. And now the 12th District State Representative race featuring Dan Maher and Carrie Condata and Dave Bernstein. You have the first question for Dan Maher.
Good evening, gentlemen. Dan, you and your opponent, I think, have expressed very different views on Initiative 1433, the minimum wage and paid sick leave initiative. Again, what is your opinion on the impacts, whether it's good or bad, to the 12th District's economy?
Well, generally, I would prefer not to have initiated measures to begin with. I would like to see the state legislature deal with these issues. Now, on minimum wage, we do have a minimum wage, and there's a reason for minimum wage, and that needs to be talked about. There's a lot of the issues around the scare tactics sometimes about what could happen to small business and those kind of things. But, you know, CTAC passed a $15 an hour deal, and it would have been great if they would have been able to hold that up to the airport employees if they would have paid that amount. They sued and said the city didn't have the right to force that onto them. And I think that would have been a great experiment to see. When we had outside money actually coming in and at $15 an hour, and we would have seen a huge increase in the economy in CTAC. In state initiative measures like this, we'll see an overall part of that. And I talked in the past about, you know, we can talk about small restaurants and those kind of things, is that if I had a small business, I would like to have an environment where I can pay my employees a livable wage and still compete. I can't do that when I have outside interests that are paying much less, and it forces me to basically not want to be in business, because I would not want to have to run a business that way. I would prefer that I have the ability to make sure that my employees are taken care of. This is one vehicle to try to make that environment happen that way. So I am for it. I think it's a step in the right direction. There might be some issues that we have to deal with in the legislature, but let's take the steps in the right directions. And when you put new the economy, it'll help.
All right, Dave, your question for Carrie Condata.
And again, Carrie, again, I think it's clear your views on the initiative. Again, what is your opinion going to be on the impacts in our 12th district economy?
Thank you, Dave. I'm very concerned. The cost of doing business in Washington is extremely high. We have some of the highest payroll taxes in the nation. We have a B&O tax as one of the highest business taxes in the nation. You add that to a large minimum wage and you get a very, very, very high cost of doing business, particularly in labor. And when you raise the cost of something dramatically, in this case 30 or 40%, generally you're going to have less of it. You're going to see less entry-level jobs. You're going to see a slowdown because you can't do basic economics. We have an alternative. I saw this initiative come to that alternative. We drafted it, but we couldn't get it through the process. Oregon has looked at it, and there's rural areas, and they're all different. One size does not fit all. I agree. So we drafted a bill that would allow Seattle to do pretty much whatever they want to do. If they want to do $15, that's fine. That bill also has a suburban area around Seattle that includes Pierce, Snohomish, and most of King County. That would be a mid-range, about a $12 position, and it would allow the rural areas outside to be close to what we are right now, about $10 an hour. So one size doesn't fit all, but this was done in Oregon. I think it was a good approach, and we will offer it as an alternative should this pass, because the other choice is a $13.50 minimum wage plus all the costs I talked about. I think it'll be really hard on small business. And last but not least, I've heard me say this before. Very people that promote this say they do not like big corporations, and the so-called 1% plays directly into that. Olive Garden and all these corporations can spread those costs. Home Depot, Costco, they can spread those costs all over. The little guys can't. They have to absorb it all. They have to pay it all. And to me, it's going to really, really make small business difficult and play right into the hands of the larger corporations. Thank you.
Steve Hare, you are next. Your first question for Carrie Condata.
Carrie, should Washington be a right-to-work state?
Well, there's times that I've felt that way because unions here have had a significant presence in the political spectrum. Right now, when we look at the elections across the state going into different coffers, it's almost a 2.5 or 3-to-1 margin on the Democrat side, mostly powered by unions. And so there's a huge influence politically. Now, functionally, I think unions have a place, and some of them actually are doing a very good job. I think one union I'm very impressed with is the IBEW, the electrical workers. They have found that it's more important to work with the company than stay on the old ground of we're not going to take any cuts, we're not going to make any adjustments, we just want more and more and more. We've watched them work with us on the Republican side with actually putting tax policy together for the server farms, and we've worked together with those companies, and what we found is that it works out pretty well. And so I think what we need more than anything is probably the unions to get a more modern approach like they do in Europe. There's places in Germany, for instance. I know when the economy slowed down, Porsche sat down with their unions and said, look, we got a problem. Car sales are going to drop like a stone. We've got a major recession. They worked out a deal. They kept everybody working. They took a pay cut. They cut back on some benefits. And when it was all said and done, they all survived and they came back. If we could get that atmosphere between our unions and our business, we may not need a right-to-work state. But the old days of just more and more and more and more benefits and we're not going to take a cut no matter what, that isn't working.
All right, Steve, your question for Dan Maher.
Same question, Dan.
Thank you for the same question. There's a difference in political contributions that come from a union compared to like Freedom Works. A union represents people. I'm all for representation of people. I don't know what else to say about that. There is a difference. When we have organizations that are working for rights, safety, to have a safe place to work, to have a livable wage again. Those are things that need to be protected, not taken away. If you're not sure what a right to work state is, there's a lot of them. You have no ability to stand up for any group, can't strike, they can't perform possibly the things they need to do to hold up to their rights as workers. If you look at these states, and I think the comparison should be to go to look at what's going on in right to work states and see how the employees are doing. You know, when we talk about public service, it was a public service employees that stepped back and said, you know, we're not going to take our COLA when we had a crisis in the state. People that are in service and understand that, those are people that will step up when they feel that they're being treated fairly. You know, Kerry brought up our taxes and all those kinds of things that are going on in this state. We have a very regressive tax plan, which then puts the biggest burden on the people that can afford it the least. That does put pressure on whether you need more pay to make sure that you can support your family. We don't need to get rid of these vehicles for people to protect themselves from profit. We have a large business environment that treats employees as a commodity. There's something that we need to keep pushing down to make it cheaper so we can provide some kind of competition.
Thank you, Dan. Your 2 minutes is up. Cal Fitzsimmons, your question for Dan Maher, please.
Okay, Dan. Do you believe that climate change is a serious threat to the earth? And if so, is Washington State doing enough to address it?
Yes, I do believe in the science. And that it's affected by man. I remember when Earth Day started when I was in middle school. And one of the most frustrating things about watching what happened in our country was that they were starting to figure some of these things out, that there were some issues with pollution on our Earth, and that we have to protect this total Earth environment or we're going to be in big trouble. And we're starting to see some of the results of that. If I was talking to the president of the IBEW, and I'm endorsed by them, and then I started arguing with him, which I thought maybe you might hold your endorsement after this. Are jobs more important than the environment, is what I was talking about. Are we supposed to be pushing for coal-fired plants in our state to make sure that we have jobs? That short-term thinking has a lot of problems. You know, as a labor union, I can see that they want to do that, but I think it would do them well and a lot of other organizations to say, let's stand up for what's really right. What's the best thing for our kids and our grandchildren? And make decisions based on that. And I think that's one of the roles of government, not to make sure that we're greasing the wheels so the next company can come in and get tax breaks to make sure that we have some jobs and maybe we'll get our tax income up to the point where we can maybe provide some more services. It's short-sighted if we're only looking 5 years down the road. We need to look longer term. Our government needs to look longer term than that. And we can pave the direction to make sure that we are putting less carbon in our environment.
Kerry Condata, your question from Cal Fitzsimmons.
Well, Kerry, I was going to ask you the same question, but I wanted to return to that minimum wage question. You mentioned that when you get to the legislature, if it passes, you will start working on an alternative measure. I'm curious as to if that makes you uncomfortable at all to already, before it's even been voted on, be talking about overriding the will of the people.
No, because I think it's just a different approach. I don't think it's really overriding the will of the people. But the fact is we'd have to have a 2/3 vote in both chambers, and that's very difficult to do. What I always want to offer is solutions to problems. I wish we could have pushed this bill through this session and had the alternative so people could choose, because then we could say which is the will of the people. And I would bet that the process or the approach that I have would actually be more popular. But this is what we're up against. The fact is initiatives are becoming more difficult to deal with because they are larger in scope and larger in cost. The classroom size initiative is a perfect example. People thought, yeah, that's great. Smaller classrooms, it's good for everybody, but they didn't see the $4 or $5 billion bill that was attached to it. And guess who gets to deal with that? The legislature gets to deal with that. And we've had to thwart the will of the people because we couldn't afford to pay for it. And so we've had to put that initiative aside. So initiatives are very challenging, and there's more coming at us all the time. It seems like they're getting bigger and more costly. Dan said I agree with him on this one point, is I think that I'd rather see things go through the legislature. Most of the initiatives that are on the ballot this year have all been before the legislature, including the carbon tax, and they did not pass. In a legislature that is very balanced, that these things should have had an opportunity to either pass or be modified and pass, none of them made it out. So instead, outside money steps in, puts it on the ballot, and promotes it that way. You're bypassing the legislature. Now, initiatives in the past have done other things the other way too. But actually, Cal, I think we should look at all the possibilities. I am very concerned about this passing and what it's going to do to Eastern Washington, and I think we better have some alternatives ready.
Okay, your closing statements. We'll start with 1 minute for Dan Maher.
This is the longest job interview I've ever been in my life. And in that vein, I'd like to talk about a little bit more about me. I live a very conservative personal life. I've been married 27 years. I have 5 children. It takes commitment to do that. And I also have a commitment to rural areas. I grew up in a very rural area. There were 5,000 people in a 3-county area in North Dakota. I understand the rural issues and how you have to do things to get it to work here. It's not a divide on party lines. To say that we have to be in the Republican side because you're in a rural area is not serving us well. It's a rural versus urban issues. And some of those cross over, especially when it comes to transportation of our products to market. They have a stake in it too.
Thank you, Dan. Kerry Kandata, your closing minute.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you, everybody, for doing this. This is quite a board of distinguished gentlemen up here. I've been around you guys a long time. Folks, every one of these candidates you're going to see tonight have worked hard. I've been out with them on the trail. We've been all over the district. We've been all over the counties, and I can tell you every one of them has worked really hard to earn your vote. Now it's your turn. It's the end of this long election cycle that we're all very, very tired of, but they've really put in the time. I hope you'll put in the time to mark those ballots, regardless of who you choose. Please fill out those ballots and make those votes. That's what's really important in America. And it looks like right now the turnout's going to be really good. When we have a primary with a turnout of 33%, folks, that's disheartening to all of us. Let's have a big turnout. Let's vote. Let's do what America does best. In regards to the outcome, we're all going to go on the next day. But I thank you all for your continued support, and it's been a wonderful ride, and maybe this year, for the first time in many years, I'll get to be a chairman because we're 2 seats out of the majority, and right now, according to the polling, we just might make that. So I'm looking forward to hopefully coming back as a chairman. But thank you again for your support.
That is our first 12th District State Representative race. Dan Maher and Kerry Kandata. Up next, Douglas County Commission race featuring Dale Snyder and Kyle Steinberg. You are watching and listening to the North Central Washington Candidates Forum.
So this is Honda listening to its customers. They did a poll and women overwhelmingly came back and said that a lifetime warranty would be most important to them. Hondas are already incredibly reliable, and this lifetime warranty just adds that additional peace of mind that if anything ever goes wrong, it's covered. Most manufacturers anticipate their cars to be on the road for anywhere from 7 to 10 years. With a Honda, you're getting 15 to 20. Now with our new lifetime warranty, it's going to be extended even beyond that.
Ever not vote because you believed your vote didn't count? That it doesn't matter how we vote in North Central Washington, Seattle will decide the outcome? Well, that's just not true. With just a few more votes, we can change the outcome of statewide races and initiatives. Let your voices be heard. The Chelan County Republican webpage has information about great candidates and initiatives we support. So turn in your ballot and vote.
This is Kelly Hart. Join me for the appropriately named program, The Kelly Hart Show. It's a different interview show where we focus more on the people. We also talk about the issues. The Kelly Hart Show, 2 p.m. and 11 p.m. weekdays, right here on the NCWLIFE channel.
This is TV. This is TV Set Free. TV everywhere from Localtel sets you free to watch what you want, where you want. Catch your favorite networks, including live TV, ready to watch on any web-connected device for no extra charge. That's TV set free. Enjoy the extra value LocalTel delivers with TV everywhere. Visit localtel.net and sign up today.
This is Kelly Hart. Join me for the appropriately named program, The Kelly Hart Show. It's a different interview show where we focus more on the people. We also talk about the issues. The Kelly Hart Show, 2 p.m. and 11 p.m. weekdays, right here on the NCWLIFE channel.
The North Central Washington Candidates Forum, a joint venture of the NCWLIFE channel, News Radio 560 KPQ, and the Wenatchee World. Our next race is the Douglas County Commission race featuring Dale Snyder and Kyle Steinberg. And Steve Hare is first up with a question for Dale Snyder.
Dale, in retrospect, was it a wise decision for Chelan and Douglas County to dissolve their partnerships with the court system and the jail?
Well, the court system was long before my time, and yes, Steve, I think that was a wise decision because Douglas County has their own Superior Court judge now, so we're not sharing a judge, and Judge Hotchkiss stays plenty busy, so yes. And the jail partnership, when I was first elected, Doug England and I tried to work together to keep that going, but in the end, you know, sometimes things just don't work, and by going to Okanagan County, Douglas County's saving over $1 million a year by putting our prisoners up there. It's worked out well with the sheriff's office. We still have an agreement with Chelan County that they do a 24-hour hold, so if someone's arrested in the valley, they take them over to Chelan County and they hold them until Okanagan County comes up and picks them up the next day. So in retrospect, yes, I think both things were good decisions for Douglas County and have worked out well.
Steve, your question for Kyle Steinberg.
Washington has 39 counties. Only one county does not have a noxious weed control board. That's Douglas County. Would that change if you're elected?
Well, I believe we got to look at each individual situation, and if it truly becomes a problem or not. I'd personally like to see landowners take care of their own property and not impose the will of a government on landowners. It's something that we'd have to study, to look at, to see if it's becoming a problem. If one person's problem is spreading to another person's property and affecting another person's property through noxious weed spread, if that becomes an issue, it's definitely something worth looking at, because we don't want anybody's property being adversely affected by someone else not taking care of theirs. But I would prefer that people do it on their own will and cognizance without having the intervention of government to tell them how to do it.
Next up, Cal Fitzsimmons with a question for Kyle Steinberg.
Kyle, you've said that Douglas County has too many building regulations. I'm curious if you can identify which ones you're talking about and how they might differ from what other counties typically have.
Sure. What I was exactly in reference to is when you do a small development, you know, we want to make sure that the developments are nice. We want the developments to have sidewalks, and we want them to have the necessary infrastructure to the development. A lot of these times, people want to do small segmented developmental process, but they're required to front all the costs as if they were developing the whole entire surrounding parcel. For instance, you know, a several acre development with several parcels slated to be developed, but then being forced to develop 40 acres worth of site improvements, curb gutter and sidewalk, half-street improvements, easements for intersections. It's just not feasible when you're doing small-scale development. I'm definitely in favor of keeping that, you know, standard that we have going. I just want to make sure that it's implemented in a way that doesn't make develop unfeasible.
And Cal, your question for Dale Snyder.
Yes, Dale, it seems like every time there's a Douglas County Commissioner race, growth and development are at the forefront of the debate. 8 years in office, can you say that you are positioned for growth and you are open to development adequately?
Yes, we're definitely positioned and we're open. If you look, after we expanded the urban growth area in the East Wenatchee area in 2015, so far there's been 8 subdivisions that have submitted applications and 9 more that I know of, and there may be more now that have had pre-application meetings. So
we're going to see a big boom in houses being built in the East Wenatchee area in the next few years. So the answer is yes, and when we do those developments, the developer needs to put in the roads and the infrastructure. The number one thing that people want, and this has been pointed out in several surveys, they want sidewalks. So yes, when the development goes in, they need to put the infrastructure in at that time, and it needs to be up to standards because they're going to turn that over to the county eventually, and it needs to be up to standards so when the county owns it, you aren't going in a year later and fixing it. Thank you.
Dave Bernstein, your question for Dale Snyder.
Dale, what can you do as a county commissioner effectively in an action plan to try and bring more jobs to Douglas County?
Well, what we can do, Dave, is what we've been doing is we work with the Port District, the PUD, Water Sewer District, the cities and towns in the county, and we work with them, and that is really improved over the last couple of years with the North End study that has taken place. That's brought everybody to the table, including the school districts. And if we all work together, we can strategically put in some infrastructure to maybe bring in new businesses to the area. If you look out at the Pangbourne industrial area, the last few years there's been a lot of new businesses in there. Businesses have expanded. Our sales tax has gone up over double since 2012. So obviously we have businesses coming to county, spending money, and we have the building going on that's paying sales tax too. Thank you.
Dave, your question for Kyle Steinberg.
And the question to you, Kyle, is how can you do that more effectively than is already being done?
Well, you know, I'm not satisfied with the status quo. It's one thing I've learned in business. I'm always willing to go above and beyond what the job description is. Take that extra effort, put in the extra time to do so. While I believe the North End project is a very viable long-term solution, I think we have a lot more immediate need for jobs and economic development as well as housing development. And I think we have areas that we can capitalize on that now. And I think capitalizing on that now will continue to fund our tax base, which will help us with those long-term projects like the North End study. So to answer your question is going above and beyond what the job description is, not being satisfied with the status quo, and really trying to make a difference now with what we have available to prepare us for that North End study. Thank you.
Closing statements. First up is Dale Snyder.
8 years ago, I started a journey, and I want that journey to continue. I love Douglas County. I love serving the citizens of Douglas County as your commissioner. I look at where Douglas County was when I came into office. The first budget I inherited had an $800,000 cash carryover. This year, we're going to carry over about $8 million. So the county is in great shape. We're poised to get even better, and I want to continue that. Thank you very much.
And Kyle Steinberg, your closing statement.
Well, I'd first like to thank everybody for coming out here, supporting us. It's been a long road. I'd like you all to vote, number one, please, and tell everybody else to vote. It is a lot of work, and we do appreciate your vote. I think a lot of the last question I just answered is really what I'm all about. My youth, my energy, I go above and beyond, and I'm really looking forward to serving you, the people, and I'm really looking forward to making a difference. So, you know, I ask you guys to do your homework, and I encourage you to get out and vote, and I would be honored to receive yours. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Douglas County Commission candidates Dale Snyder and Kyle Steinberg. We would like to thank once again the Chelan County Republican Party as well as the Numerica Performing Arts Center. When we come back, 12th District State Representative race featuring Mike Steele and Jerry Payne next on the stage. You are watching and listening to the North Central Washington Candidates Forum.
We've been in the cleaning industry for over 10 years, and we noticed a need in the housing market for reliable, professional, and specialized cleaning and finishing company.
They come in with spunk and personality, a lot of energy, and they take pride in their business.
We offer a wide array of cleaning solutions, no matter how big or small the job. Anything from new construction to move-in, move-outs, we do it all. Give us a call today to see how we can help you with your cleanup.
The Cottage Inn has been a Wenatchee Valley landmark since 1940, making it one of the longest-running locally owned restaurants around. And it's better than ever. Steak, seafood, and their famous homemade desserts for dinner, wonderful lunch items, and breakfast on Sundays, all made from scratch and at an affordable price. It's no wonder the Cottage Inn has been so popular for over 75 years. Enjoy a fabulous meal today at the Cottage Inn on Easy Street in Old Station.
Hey, it's Mike Mad Dog Magnotti coming to you on NCW Life, Street Talk and Other Stuff, Mondays, 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. coming soon.
Ever not vote because you believed your vote didn't count? That it doesn't matter how we vote in North Central Washington, Seattle will decide the outcome? Well, that's just not true. With just a few more votes, we can change the outcome of statewide races and initiatives. Let your voices be heard. The Chelan County Republican webpage has information about great candidates and initiatives we support. So turn in your ballot and vote.
Hey, it's Mike Mad Dog Magnotti coming to you on NCW Life, Street Talk and Other Stuff, Mondays, 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. coming soon.
Welcome back to the North Central Washington Candidates Forum. Next up is the 12th District State Representative race between Mike Steele and Jerry Payne. And Cal Fitzsimmons, you have the first question for Mike Steele.
Mike, would you be willing to vote for a bill in the legislature you may not necessarily agree with in order to get another piece of legislation passed that you thought was really important to your district?
It's a great question. You know, I think it's really important that when you make any decision at the legislative level, you're going back and you're engaging with your communities. And I think every decision, we have two responsibilities as a representative for the state of Washington. First and foremost, we represent our district. We represent the people who make up the 12th district. But secondarily, we also work to represent the entire state of Washington, pass laws that affect all of us. So I think to answer your question, you'd really have to evaluate the entirety of the bill and understand what effects it places on the constituents in your district and what effects it places on your constituents across the state. So it's really on a case-by-case basis, I would say, but our responsibility is to always understand what's in every bill. Do our research, talk to our constituents, understand it, and then cast as informed a vote as possible that's going to be as effective for our constituents as possible. Thanks, Cal.
And Cal, your question for Jerry Payne.
Yes, Jerry. Assuming that Representative Condada's hopes for a Republican majority in the House don't come to fruition, do you believe you can work well with the Democratic majority?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. As you all know, I'm a realtor, so I'm used to working with the other side and getting things done. That's the only way I get paid, is to actually do the work, to get out there and meet with the appraiser, the home inspector, the lender, the title, the escrow folks. Not all of them have the same agenda that I do. They're protecting their interests as well. So my ability to build coalitions and collaborations to get things done, I do it every day. I've been doing it for 26 years as a realtor, and I've made a pretty good living, throughout. I've been president of the association 3 times, so I know how to work with people, work with the boards, work with my buyers and sellers, and those other people who are doing things to get the deal done. So yes, I can do that.
Dave Bernstein, your question for Jerry Payne.
Jerry, of course, you've seen firsthand in your years in real estate what's been going on with markets like Chelan and Leavenworth. How could you work to make sure that those markets don't become too expensive for the people who work there to afford a home?
Well, that's a good question, and actually I was the broker manager of the Leavenworth, the Windermere office for 4 years, so I dealt with that market quite a bit. And unfortunately, or fortunately, there was a lot of influx of Seattle money come over. They do well over there with their real estate and come over and drive prices up. But, we've heard from the county commissioners, there's a regulatory process that's going on. And just last week, there was another thing that came down the pike, the Hearst decision out of Whatcom County, is dealing with exempt wells and not being able to actually drill wells now. And I heard that Spokane County implemented that same rule today. So, In order to get a well now to build a house, you're going to have to go through a hydrology study, which can be $20,000 to $30,000. So part of the problem is adding the cost on to the bottom line, which drives up housing, and that helps nobody.
Dave, your question for Mike Steele.
Mike, we've had quite a few candidates talk in interviews I've held, talk about leveraging our high-tech infrastructure for more job creation here, but talk about any ideas you've explored to expand opportunities in other career fields here in the 12th District, like trade or maybe some more technical job training opportunities here.
Well, we're very fortunate, Dave, to live in a state that is extremely, extremely innovative. And we live in an area where we take advantage of the incredibly fiber-rich infrastructure that exists thanks to the PUD. And I know on my daily exchanges and interactions with businesses across our district, in my role as the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce, that telecommuting is one of the major industries that we outpace most of the states in the Northwest. So folks are coming and living here, and their jobs may be in Chicago or New York, their base of operation. So we already are ahead of the curve, but I think what we want to continue to do is look for ways to innovate, look for ways to utilize technology so that we can bring more folks over, we can create living wage jobs, we can deal with some of this workforce housing issues, and it's not going to be an additional burden on our infrastructure and our economy. So we want to create those things and have those things work to our advantage. And again, we're very fortunate because we do live in this fiber-rich environment. So thank you.
Steve Hare, your first question for Mike Steele.
Mike, what do you see as the most cost-effective way for the state to pay for transportation projects?
Well, Steve, that's a great question. I'll go back to my position on innovation. One of the things that we did see in our last transportation package was a bipartisan collaborative effort to create innovation in mobile infrastructure across our state. I think we can continue to see that happen. We need to continue to push for that to happen. And we need to look for ways to continue to reduce carbon emissions. I will just say one of the things that came up, and I think it's important to note, that Washington State is way, way ahead in our carbon emissions. We are below 1990 levels now. And that's a huge thanks to the innovation in transportation. It's a huge thanks to the partnerships that small businesses have created across the state. And it's a huge thanks for all those folks that have worked so hard to make sure that we have infrastructure that we need. Obviously, in rural 12th District, we rely on solid transportation infrastructure to get our goods to market. So I will go and fight for legislation that benefits the 12th District and our transportation package specifically for our area here and make sure that nothing impacts the ability to get our goods to market.
And Steve, your question for Jerry Payne.
I-502, the initiative passed by voters to legalize recreational marijuana. Do you think it should be revised?
Yes. It is legal. The problem is that, at the county level, the state did what they needed to do to make the rules work. They sent that down to the counties. In my purview, the counties kind of fumbled the ball on the goal line and didn't give the people, the producers, the growers, and the retail not so much, but the growers and producers, the ability to work within those rules. I don't think that they took a look at the conditional use permits and those things that were required to make it work where they were placing them. So I think some revision at the legislature needs to be done. I know Representative Condata heads a group that is working on that, and I'm looking forward to assisting in any way I can to revise those rules and make it it's a profitable business and it's going to bring a lot of revenue to the state. So we need to make it work.
Closing statements. First up is Mike Steele.
Well, thanks again for everyone that's watching at home and listening, and for everyone that's here in the auditorium. As many of the candidates have already expressed, we're all glad to be at the end of this campaign cycle. We've learned a lot about the issues that face the 12th District. It's been an honor to get to know a lot of you and to learn about the things that are important to you. And I would just say that, as a fifth-generation native of the district, it's so important to me that I go over and represent you in a way that represents your values and your care for the place that we all call home. I've been honored to be endorsed by the Washington Farm Bureau, the Association of Washington Business, the Washington Retail Association, and honored as well to serve on a multitude of local groups that do good things for our communities across the 12th District. And no matter what happens on the 8th of November, that tradition and those expectations that I've set for myself will continue. So I hope for your vote on November 8th, and thanks again for the opportunity to get to know all of you better.
And the closing statement from Jerry Payne.
Well, I too want to thank you for coming out tonight and for KPQ and the World and NCWLIFE putting this on. It's great to be able to talk with people. You know, a couple, 3-4 months ago, I would have fumbled all over my words, so doing this has helped me as well. And I'm hungry. Golly, you shouldn't do this at dinner time. You know, I'm a 53-year Valley resident. I've been a realtor for 26 years. I've served on several nonprofit boards, mostly in leadership roles. So I know that I can do the job once I get to Olympia. Look at my endorsements as well: realtors, builders, restaurants, lodging, bankers. You know, all the people that believe in what I do on a daily basis. I can address the housing issues. I'm uniquely qualified to do that. It's a big problem here. Homeless as well. There's things we need to deal with, and I look forward to your vote as well. Thank you.
12th District State Representative candidates Mike Steele and Jerry Payne. Great job, gentlemen, and thank you. Again, big thank you to the Chelan County Republican Party and the Numerica Performing Arts Center. Our next people to be up on stage here will be Douglas County Commissioner candidates Dan Sutton and Pat Haley. You are watching and listening to the North Central Washington Candidates Forum.
Ever not vote because you believed your vote didn't count? That it doesn't matter how we vote in North Central Washington, Seattle will decide the outcome? Well, that's just not true. With just a few more votes, we can change the outcome of statewide races and initiatives. Let your voices be heard. The Chelan County Republican webpage has information about great candidates and initiatives we support. So turn in your ballot and vote.
The NCWLIFE channel serves as Wenatchee's local TV station. Our channel highlights community growth, information, sports, and entertainment. You can experience the news, events, and people of North Central Washington on the station that is committed to the area we call home.
Hi, Brent Crowder at Town Nissan, standing next to the Nissan Rogue and Nissan Murano. Two beautiful, award-winning, all-wheel drive vehicles, great for the Wenatchee Valley. Come down, test drive one today. We also have the all-new Nissan Titan, half-ton, four-wheel drive truck with the new diesel Cummins engine. All the power and towing capacity you could ever want, but the ride and feel of a new luxury car. Come down to Town Nissan today, next to Costco in East Wenatchee.
Walkabout Grill, open 7 days a week for lunch and dinner in downtown Wenatchee and now downtown Leavenworth, where eating out is eating healthy.
Welcome back to the North Central Washington Candidates Forum. We're going to take this 10-second time out to pause for station identification. And I think that was 10 seconds. I did the 1,000 alligator, 2 alligator, 3 alligator. I think I got it right. All right, Douglas County Commissioner candidates Dan Sutton and Pat Haley have joined us up here on stage. Dave Bernstein, you have the first question for Dan Sutton.
Dan, Douglas County has gone, I believe, 3 consecutive years without tapping surpluses to balance the budget, and also sets aside significantly more than is recommended for its rainy day fund. And in addition, sets aside more monies into some more reserve accounts. Would you maintain that fiscal philosophy, or do you have other priorities you would like to support with at least some of that revenue?
That's a great question. First of all, thank you for having me here. I appreciate that. Being fiscally responsible by setting away funds is certainly a great idea, and it's something that we would maintain, but there are some programs that I'm interested in that I'd like to see a little more funding go to. Our Sheriff's Department I think can be more adequately funded for some of the needs in the rural portions of our county. I've been through literally every community in Douglas County, all 1,849 square miles. And we've got some issues in some of the smaller communities that we tend to overlook because East Wenatchee is typically the focus. There are some outlying drug issues in both Mansfield and Bridgeport, and I know the citizens there at least expressed to me that they'd like to see a little more visibility of the Douglas County Sheriff's Department, and I don't think that's their fault. I think they simply need some more funding, drug interdiction task force, for example, and we could improve that a little bit.
And Dave, your question for Pat Haley.
Pat, you worked with the Port District before, which was in the job creation business, so to speak, for Douglas County. You still get to play a role with that as a Douglas County Commissioner if elected. So what would your action plan be to try and bring more jobs to Douglas County?
You know, job creation isn't a magic button that you push, because I worked for 10 years trying to recruit companies to locate here. And a lot of it is the market and the company and the benefits that we had. I created a slogan to describe the value of this area. And I said that we were resource rich and people strong. And I identified those resources as power, fiber, and recreation. And then the people that live here, the education system, the visionary standard that people have. And I traveled with that message all over the country. And I made site visits to companies all over the country to try to recruit them to come here. We are a cul-de-sac location, which means in the area of manufacturing, raw material has to come in, a product's made, and it has to go out to customers, often in distant markets. So that transportation cost is added to the factor of doing business here. And so what I would foresaw as the growth opportunity was in the area of technology and fiber optics. As soon as the PUDs received approval for legislation to put in fiber optic networks, we saw companies locate here where their location did not matter. And so they could ship their product on the fiber, and it didn't matter where they're located. And as a result, we saw data centers and all sorts of technology just take off in this area. That's our future. And so in the area of infrastructure, in the area of opportunities that we can provide for expanding technology, I still leave that role to the ports. That's their job. They have the authority to use taxpayer resources for economic development. The county doesn't necessarily have that authority. And so with that authority, I'm going to give them the opportunity to advance their agenda, their purposes, what their mission is, and allow them to take the credit for the success that they're going to bring in new job opportunities.
Steve Hare, your first question for Pat Haley.
This will be a question for both of you. Lincoln County has recently changed the way collective bargaining agreements are negotiated. They now make that process open to the public. Would you support that as a way to make government more transparent?
Well, we have great laws in the state of Washington. I think we lead the country in the area of transparency. And I believe the public should know about the outcomes of events that happen. But I remind you that our Constitution was done in executive session. It was not open to the public. And it's important that you have negotiation that takes place so that information that is shared in between the two parties trying to make that negotiation process can have a sense of confidentiality and know that this information isn't going to be used against them for some other negotiations or some other information. So I would refrain from having that being allowed, just like an executive session. You don't make decisions in executive session. What you're allowed to do is discuss it in confidential fashion so that you can lay things out on the table and not have to worry about the media come in and having it all over the newspaper. And then you come out of executive session and you make the decision in the public sector. And that's the way I think that the labor negotiations should go. It should follow that executive session pattern and be allowed to have communication one-on-one between interested parties, come to agreement, come to a solution, come out of executive session, make a public decision.
And Dan Sutton.
Same question, Dan. Should union negotiations be a more transparent process?
Yes, absolutely. I think any negotiation, any hearing, any meeting should be open to the public. There shouldn't be anything to hide. And the public's input and the public's perception of negotiation can be very beneficial to achieving the proper result. I've seen it in local meetings where the public was involved and had their input, and it actually changed the course of the decision making because of that input. Executive session doesn't go away in this process. You still have the right for executive session, and executive session always remains private. That's the purpose of it. But transparency is important. I think that the people, especially of Douglas County, and we tend to be a pretty open group of people, want to know what's going on. I think it's beneficial to our county.
Cal Fitzsimmons, your first question is for Dan Sutton.
Yes, Mr. Sutton. Your opponent has described Building North Central Washington as an organization that wants to take over the commission and, quote, have things done their way. You've been endorsed by them and by other building organizations, I've noticed. Should Douglas County residents be concerned that you will put the interest of developers ahead of the public at large?
You know, that's a super question, actually. And I've also been endorsed by the Washington State Farm Bureau, and they don't have an agenda either. You know, it might be interesting to know that I've been endorsed by those people because I went up and I was interviewed by them, just like my opponent was, sat down, and they asked questions and I answered questions. The truth of the matter is, as a commissioner, I don't have a scepter and a magic wand. I can't just go in willy-nilly and start changing laws and regulations to meet some special interest needs. What we do have in Douglas County, and it's existed for some length of time, is what I perceive to be as an adversarial relationship between county governance and the people that cause growth, which are the builders and the developers. I've witnessed it personally. I've listened to comments by public officials that were not really savory towards that group of people. So there's animosity between both groups, and it goes both directions. My role isn't to go in and change regulations. My role is to sit down with the developers, the builders, the people who grow our county, and find a common ground and resolve any problems that might exist. You know, we cannot achieve optimum growth in our county until we resolve these problems. Imagine what we could do if we had our developers and our county government on the same team working towards the same goal. The citizens of Douglas County will benefit greatly.
Thank you.
And Pat Haley.
Yeah. Mr. Haley, your comment about the Building Association and its influence on county government, that's not the first time someone has made that allegation about Douglas County. Do you have specific examples of them having too much influence on the county commissioners?
Well, the issue that came up had to do with a postcard that quoted me in a statement that was inaccurate. And so that mailed out to all of East Wenatchee, and so I had to deal with, you know, the pushback on how to resolve something that was misleading. And so in the area of building development, I have traveled around all over to East Wenatchee. I know that Dan has done the same thing. And there may be developers who have issues with certain things that are going on in the county, but I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt that there are some developers who have figured it out, because there are tracts going up houses by the hundreds, and it's just staggering to me in areas that I've never been in before. You know, I live on the north end of Cascade, and so I don't have a reason to be up by the airport as much, but there are hundreds of houses. And I went up to a builder and said, hey, are you having any problems with the Douglas County Planning Department? He says, no, we put this whole tract in and we got it all worked out and figured it out. So you know, to me that says that there's some people who loud voices. Now I'm an engineer, and so I have an engineering degree. So when a contractor comes up to me and tries to tell me something that I know that is not correct, I can push back pretty readily because I know why we do certain things. It was my concern that somebody who doesn't have that background can easily be persuaded that they've got a case that may not be legitimately there. And I've found developers who are building projects just by the hundreds. And so when I hear this talk about problems going on, my plan, my desire is to create an ombudsman position, similar that you would find at a university, where if you have an issue, you can go to this independent source, lay out your case, and have a means of solving the problem. There's two sides to each issue, and so the job would be to kind of mitigate what the problem is, if there is a problem, and find a solution that works.
Closing statements. First up is Dan Sutton.
You know, I want to thank everybody that's here tonight and everybody that's watching. This has been an incredible journey. I've had the opportunity to go through some of the communities that, frankly, I hadn't been in probably 20 years, and talk with the people of the county. It's amazing and it's important for us to realize that Douglas County is not East Wenatchee. It doesn't run from Grant Road to Bastion Bridge. All of the rural communities matter as well. And the people in Waterville and Mansfield, Bridgeport, Orondo, Rock Island, Cooley Dam, Withrow, all of them have their own special needs and concerns. And it's very important as a commissioner that we recognize that and we address them equally. They all pay taxes. So thank you all very much for having me, and it's been a great journey, and I'm glad it's close to being over.
Pat Haley, your closing statement.
You know, all of us will tell you stories about going campaigning, and it's really been a remarkable experience. And some of the people that I've met, it's just been incredible. You know, all sorts of things can happen when you knock on a door and you're a stranger. And on one particular occasion, a lady who was working out in her yard, and I kind of disturbed her, and she was a little bothered anyway. And I said, "Ma'am, what's the matter?" And she had been working and disturbed this little rat's nest. And among the little critters that were on the ground there, they were all little chirping, and she just could not go back to the garden. And I said, "Well, ma'am, maybe I could help you." And so I took my brochure, we scooped up that little guy, and I said, "Okay, we should say a prayer." She says, "Oh, yes, please do." And I said, "Okay, well, Lord, this creature is yours, and we're going to send him back to Narnia where all the animals talk." And you know, I thought, you know, that is what we do in serving the public, is that we find whatever need that we can do, however we need to fill it. So I just want to thank you for this community that has been so embracing. And the next time you offer me a beer, I'll take you up on it. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Douglas County Commissioner candidates Dan Sutton and Pat Haley.
Thank you.
On the stage next, 12th District State Senate race, the candidates John Weiss and Brad Hawkins. You are watching and listening to the North Central Washington Candidates Forum.
How do you relax? Rejuvenate your soul. It's time you did. Good to you. Take an adult timeout at the Alpine Spa in Leavenworth. Call today.
Ever not vote because you believed your vote didn't count? That it doesn't matter how we vote in North Central Washington, Seattle will decide the outcome? Well, that's just not true. With just a few more votes, we can change the outcome of statewide races and initiatives. Let your voices be heard. The Chelan County Republican webpage has information about great candidates and initiatives we support. So turn in your ballot and vote.
Walkabout Grill, open 7 days a week for lunch and dinner in downtown Wenatchee and now downtown Leavenworth, where eating out is eating healthy.
To the North Central Washington Candidates Forum, I'm Kelly Hart, and our final candidates on the stage, 12th District State Senate John Weiss and Brad Hawkins. We will start things off with Steve Hare. And Steve, your first question goes to John Weiss.
What is Aleppo? I think we should loosen this up a little bit, folks, but anyway.
A question I'm not answering.
Wrong forum. Okay. This is a question for John Weiss. Do party politics help or hinder the legislative process?
Well, it can be a little bit of both. Party politics can help the process, but it also can hinder it. There is nothing that gets done in Olympia or in life without compromise. And if you just go with your party and you just go with politics, you're never going to get anything done. I learned at a very young age from my senator of my home state of Wyoming, Alan Simpson. He came to my high school. Of course, we all knew everything. We were juniors. And he said, young men and women, if you don't learn to compromise without compromising your values, you will go nowhere in life. I never forgot that because he was dead on. There is a compromise in every single issue that you deal with. Now, like I say, party politics will come into play at times on a particular issue. I mean, we've been talking about them through the entire campaign. And there are dynamic differences on some of the issues between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. A perfect example of that may be a state income tax. The Republicans, very opposed. Democrats, some of them are opposed, but others want it. That is a party issue that you can deal with. But in the middle somewhere, there's going to be a compromise on that issue, especially how we address our budgets in the future, especially how we address sales tax, especially how we address how we fund our schools. All of those items go into the matter of it. And when it comes down to it, when you have constituents, everything first for me is my conscience. Because if I violate my conscience, I violate my core value. Number two is to be the voice of the constituents. And number three, the voice of the party. And that's how I've lived my life, and that's how I would be as your next state senator. Thank you very much for the question.
Steve, your next question is for Brad Hawkins.
Brad, what role should lobbyists play in the legislative process?
Well, lobbyists do have a role in the legislative process to advocate for their clients. But what I have experienced in Olympia is that the lobbyists have a tremendous amount of pressure, perhaps too much so, on the legislators in Olympia. And it goes well beyond just the advocating for their interests. There's a tremendous amount of money that flows through Olympia, through the lobbying community, into the legislators. It dictates access into some of the offices. And I think lawmakers have to be very cautious and know where they stand in their core before they get elected to the legislature because of the tremendous and undue influence by some in the lobbying community. But there definitely is a role for advocacy. But it's important for anybody who goes over to Olympia to understand who they're representing. And my goal has always been to represent you first, the people of the 12th District, above any party politics, above any special interest groups, above any lobbyist pressure. I will go over to Olympia if I'm elected your state senator and do what I've done for the last 4 years, which is put you first above all else. I'll listen to others, but I'll keep an open mind so I can do what's best for you always.
Cal Fitzsimmons, your first question is for Brad Hawkins.
Yes, Brad. Speaking of party politics, there have been a lot of Republican legislators who have endorsed your opponent. And I'm wondering if you think you can be effective with that group if you're elected and go over there and have to work with your party leaders, and whether you can't help but take some lingering resentment with you. Well,
as far as the lingering resentment, I've talked with my wife, and we've We've talked about the healing process that'll take place after this campaign and the recovery phase. But I think it's important to point out, Cal, that in the Washington State Legislature, in the legislative branch of government, we have 98 members of the House and 49 members of the Senate. So when you put that together, that's 147 members of our legislative branch. So if 5 or 10 and some former endorse my opponent, so what? I have a really good relationship with many, many legislators on both sides of the aisle. Some of the bills that I've sponsored, and by the way, the bills that I've sponsored have all been bipartisan, but some of the bills that I've sponsored have 40 bipartisan co-sponsors. 40. That's almost half of the House of Representatives. And I can tell you, regardless of what's said, and regardless of how it's misinterpreted and misapplied, that no legislator is able to secure 40 bipartisan co-sponsors on a bill without having the trust and the support on both sides of the aisle. And I've been successful in passing legislation in Olympia. If people want to go check out my record, go to bradhawkins.org, go to my legislative page, and I've detailed it by year of the bipartisan bills and accomplishments during my tenure. And that, in order to do that, you not only need good bipartisan relationships in both the House, but you also need it in the Senate through all the committee process. And I think when it's all said and done, things will go over smoothly, and I look forward to serving with them in Olympia.
Cal, your question for John Weiss.
Yes, John. Do you think your involvement in Okanagan County politics, specifically support financially and otherwise for county commissioners who some consider controversial, have played a role in Brad receiving more votes in your home county than you did in the primary?
I don't believe so. I think we had a very low voter turnout in the primary election. We had a 31% turnout. We're already on track for an 80% voter turnout right now. Have I been involved with the Okanagan County Commissioners? Yes, since I moved into the county in 2005. I've worked with every county commissioner that's been in the county since then. We've had a turnover of 6 commissioners in that same time frame of 2005, and I've worked with every single one of them. They're all Republican, but I've worked with every single one of them on issues: comprehensive land use plan, shoreline management, water adjustment, environmental issues. I've been involved. And some of those we've had to take some very unpopular stands. For example, on the comprehensive plan. It was a 6,000-page document for a planning enabling county, not a GMA county. Our citizens were really concerned about that, and I led the coalition that worked on that issue, which in turn pitted me against some of the sitting county commissioners because they were drafting that regulation, and it was bad. But in doing that, I built a coalition of 1,200 people, Republicans, Democrats, environmentalists, and we actually came together and ended up with a plan. The first time since 1965, Okanagan County's adopted a new plan, and we did it because we worked together. And I don't think that had an impact, in the outcome of that election. But I am involved. I will continue to be involved, and I'll be involved in not only my community, but my counties. That is what you do as an elected official. And sometimes when you get involved, it is not a popular stance, but you stand on principle and you stand on what the citizens want. Thank you.
Dave Bernstein, you are next, and your first question is for John Weiss.
John, the State Health Exchange is projecting some of the lowest rate increases for next year in the nation. Here in our state, as a sign the Affordable Health Care Act is working well in our state. What is your assessment of health care and long-term care needs here in the 12th District, and what role can you play?
Well, actually, I don't think it's the lowest cost. If you are a private business owner, you just got your notification from your insurance carriers last week. And the average, Molina Healthcare, by the way, had the lowest increase in the state. But the average increase in healthcare costs for those who are being provided insurance is going up by 18%. 18. That is a significant challenge for our small businesses, and our employers in this area. Healthcare is a problem in this area. Healthcare providing is a problem. We have 9 critical access hospitals in the area where you need to have hospitals in the rural area, where it's 60 miles before you can actually have an ambulance show up. In dealing with that, we have the Affordable Care Act. Okay, I was not a supporter of it, but it's here. We have to implement the Affordable Care Act in our state in such a way that is financially beneficial for the people who pay the bill and the people who need the care, including Medicaid recipients. There's an 1115 waiver inside the Affordable Care Act that could help us with our affordable housing crisis. Buried inside the Health Care Act is a waiver that allows people with behavioral health challenges to get into a home. That's something we need to implement. The challenge with it is in 4 more years, it's unfunded. The federal government quits paying that portion for us, and we as a state are going to have to pick that up. How do you provide health care through end-of-life care? How do you provide care to the fixed income when you have an 18% increase? How would I be able to impact that? I've read the Affordable Care Act. I've done the budgeting. I've done the finances to it, and I can help craft our financial projections into the future to provide health care from birth to end of life. And I have the finance background of 11 years in the private sector to know where to find those dollars in our state legislature, which is actually your money. Thank you for the question.
Dave, your final question for Brad Hawkins.
Brad, what are your views on the state Supreme Court decision in the Hearst case, and how specifically could you encourage the Department of Ecology to respond to the counties and stakeholder groups?
So the Hearst case, if I'm understanding that one correctly, is the case that deals with a long-standing issue related to exempt wells, where in rural areas for development purposes, developers or homeowners could tap into a water source for domestic water that didn't withdraw more than 5,000 gallons per minute. And the state Supreme Court recently overturned a lower court's decision on that, and that's going to be a major challenge for rural development. And that will be one of the issues that the state of Washington will need to address next session if we want to make sure that we don't place undue burdens on homeowners and developers in the rural areas. One of the best approaches to that would be to work closely with the stakeholder groups in those areas. I don't believe that particular decision is localized to that particular region. I think it's Bellingham area or Whatcom County. I think it does have impacts statewide and related to the Growth Management Act. So we're going to need to put our heads together. I don't have the exact answer for what to do next, but I think the legislature will need to get the stakeholders together soon so that we can work towards a solution.
Closing statements will wrap this up, and let's start off with John Weiss.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you all for being here, and thank you all for listening and watching us on television. I'm going to answer a question that my opponent just did with the Hearst decision. The simple answer to that is we have an activist court, and we should get 3 new Supreme Court justices. That's what I think we should do to start out with. I am very proud of the service I've given since I moved to this district in 2005. I've been heavily involved in my community, not only in Okanagan County, but Chelan, Douglas, and elsewhere. One thing with me, I have never been removed from a committee that I've been asked to serve on. I have been promoted to a chairman or a vice chairman, or I've been a founder of a Boys and Girls Club, of an at-risk baseball clinic for this entire area. With me, you will get a dedicated servant who will be your voice and be very prominent as a leader in the Washington State Senate. And I ask you for your vote.
And Brad Hawkins.
Well, thank you so much for having us. You know, it's been a real pleasure to serve as your state representative for the last 4 years. And one of the reasons I'm running for state senator is because I love this community and I love this district. I love everything about it. And this community and this district has provided so much to me over the years that I feel led to give back through my public service. This campaign has not been easy on me. You know, campaigns are not for the faint of heart. I've been subject to some pretty brutal campaign tactics over the last couple weeks. And I can tell you, there are some things that you need to know about me. For one, I've served in the legislature for 4 years. And over those 4 years, I've taken over 2,000 votes, and I've never missed one. And I've never been removed from a committee either. And for a campaign to assert that is not only inaccurate, it's misleading. And I think the important thing to know is that you know me and I know where I stand. And I'm proud of who I am. Thank you so much. I'd be honored to be your state senator.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 12th District State Senate candidates. And that concludes tonight's broadcast and live event. The North Central Washington Candidates Forum is done. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. I want to thank everybody on our panel, Wenatchee World, KPQ News Radio, and NCWLIFE channel. And thank all of you for being here as well. Good night, and we'll see you on the TV and hear you on the radio.
Watching the North Central Washington Candidate Forum on the NCWLIFE channel, a presentation of the Chelan County Republican Party. The Candidate Forum is a joint venture with the Wenatchee World, the NCWLIFE channel, and News Radio 560 KPQ. Thank you for watching.